Good everybody, today I am comparing the Thermaltake Massive A21 notebook cooler, that's this aluminium one over here, with the Cooler Master NotePal X3 laptop cooling pad. Now both of these have a huge 200mm by 200mm by 20mm fan in them, so they should move a decent amount of air while being pretty quiet. Both are rated for a maximum laptop size of 17 inch. They're similar overall dimensions, except that the Thermaltake has a more consistent square shape to it, where the Cooler Master does have these cut-in edges and does sit at its flattest at a bit more of an angle than the Thermaltake. The Thermaltake is marginally lighter at 795 grams compared to 900 grams for the Cooler Master. The Cooler Master is rated at moving 65 to 76.5 CFM of air, depending on what speed it's at, so it's a variable speed. The Thermaltake has two speed options, either standard or turbo, and it just has a single rating of 64 CFM. So based on that, the Cooler Master should move a bit more air overall, even at its slowest speeds. However, this does translate in noise as well. The Thermaltake is actually rated as louder, it's rated at 28 decibels, whereas the Cooler Master is rated at between 16 and 23 decibels. I'm assuming that means the Thermaltake is based off of the turbo speed, so the loudest volume. The turbo for it is 800 RPM compared to the highest speed in the Cooler Master, which is 850 RPM. Standard speed on the Thermaltake is 600 compared to 500 on the Cooler Master. The Thermaltake is pretty flat because it's really very thin. So without the stand up, it's very flat. The Cooler Master is quite thick at the back and has an angle running down towards the front there. So it's always angled, even without the feet extended. Now speaking of the feet, the Cooler Master just has two adjustable feet. So either they're out or they're not, and that obviously is going to increase our angle further so that it sits even higher up at the back. In contrast, the Thermaltake has this stand ratchet system that lets us adjust the height, so we can go from flat to angled like that, and of course sitting down flatter while still being at an angle using the lower setting. There's actually 4 adjustable heights there plus flat. So you've got 5 different options in total. If you don't mind not having the stand locked in, you've got one extra option by closing it up like that, which gives you a little bit more of an angle than simply flat, but less than on the lowest ratchet option. So in terms of angles and heights and that sort of thing, the Thermaltake gives you a lot more versatility. Now speaking of angles, the Cooler Master does not have any lips or ledges or anything at the lower end here to help hold your laptop on. The Thermaltake has these 2 pegs which are adjustable. This is the smaller or closer together position. You can also move them out to these holes here to spread them out further depending on your needs. Now I bring this up because using a 13-inch MacBook Pro here, I can sit it on this Cooler Master and we can see it fits perfectly well on here, but again, no lip. Now at this lowest, flattest setting, there's not really an issue. It stays pretty well in position. It does move easily, like it doesn't take a lot of pressure for it to start sliding at all, and I do worry about that with nothing to prevent it from sliding off if that could become a problem. More importantly though, if we angle it up using those feet to that single extra height, this is putting us up at quite an angle and the laptop just slides straight off. There is nothing there to hold it in place, and so that is a concern. Now, if your laptop perhaps has more rubberized feet, that might hold it in place, maybe, but I'm definitely concerned about this because this laptop does have rubberized feet on it and it still slides straight off. In contrast, on the Thermaltake, you've got both this lip and these pegs which are going to hold it in place, no matter which angle you set the ratchet system to. Even at the highest angle there, that laptop is staying put. It's not going to slide off, it's only going to be if you actually physically tip this up way too far that it's going to come off. Those pegs are holding it firmly in place there. And of course the same goes for lower angles. It's really not a problem at all with this Thermaltake cooler. Now while we've got the laptop here, we can see, as I mentioned, this is a 13-inch MacBook Pro. There is plenty of room for a 15-inch. I'm not convinced about a 17-inch on either of these. A 17-inch screen is going to be majority of this diagonal. The Thermaltake is about 18.5 inches diagonally, so as long as your laptop is less than that, it should fit on here. The Cooler Master is very similar in that measurement. It's about 18 inches between the start of the flat section on this corner to the end of the flat section on this corner. I have more concern about the Cooler Master with a 17-inch laptop though, simply because it does not have any lips or anything else to hold it on. So if you're taking up 18 inches for a 17-inch laptop, you're potentially hanging off the edges here with your feet anyway, and that could be a problem. If we dive into connectivity, the Cooler Master uses a micro USB cable for power. You plug it in, and it then has a pass-through USB out, so that you're not losing a USB port. It has a variable fan speed control here. You can switch the fan on and off independently, and you can also switch the LED on and off independently. The Thermaltake uses power from one of these plugs, which is a less common pin type to USB. It then has a single switch to turn the power for the fan on or off, and then a button for turbo mode. There's no variable speeds, there's no LEDs or anything like that in this one. The stainless steel finish is quite nice, and there's no extra LED decoration or lighting or anything like that. There is just a power LED here that does come on when it's powered up. Looking under the two units, they're very similar in terms of fan access. I feel like the Thermaltake does have a little bit more space for airflow, just in the way they've done the vent there compared to the Cooler Master. The Cooler Master does have this little bit of cable management here. If we power on these two units, so the Thermaltake, as I mentioned, is just that switch on, and we can see the fans come on, and that little blue LED there has come on to indicate that it has power. And if we press that button, it turns on the turbo mode. It is very quiet, even with the turbo mode on. However, I have noted with turbo mode, there is a little bit of a sort of vibration noise in there, which is not there with the standard speed. Powering on the Cooler Master, that's just with the fan, and it is currently on the highest speed setting. We can lower that way down, which will give it similar to the Thermaltake, and it is very silent, especially at the lower speeds. The fan in the Cooler Master doesn't seem to make any of the same vibrating noises that the Thermaltake one does, so that's really nice. And of course, if you want some lighting, you can turn the LEDs on, and there are 4 of those in this. So they'll be hidden under your laptop, but they might give it a nice blue glow when it's on there, which ties in, of course, with these little blue line details at the top and bottom of the stand. What I really like about the Cooler Master is how quiet it is. I also like the fact that it has a nice USB pass-through so that you're not losing a USB port, and I like the fact that you can switch the fan and the LEDs on and off independently, as well as have a fully variable fan control, so you can set the speed to exactly what you want based on how hot your laptop's running and how quiet you want everything to be. I don't like the fact that there's no lip or anything like that on the bottom of it to prevent the laptop from sliding off. I feel like it's a really big oversight, especially when the legs are extended. In terms of the Thermaltake, I love the pegs. They hold the laptop on really firmly, even at that extended angle, which is awesome. I also like the fact that you can have multiple angles of this, and with that ratchet system you can really extend this up and adjust your screen position and height and so on with your laptop, and I think that works really well. I do like that there are multiple fan speeds here, and it is simple. It's either turbo mode or not. It would be nice to have that fan speed control, but in practice I find I don't really change the fan speed much. I also like the aluminium finish of the Thermaltake and the fact that it's just nice and square. I find that's really neat and looks a lot better than this X kind of shape of the Cooler Master one. For both of these units, I love the fact that it's a massive 200mm fan. It means that they move a decent amount of air while being really quiet, which does of course bring me back to noise. The Cooler Master does win out there. It is quieter, and that fan speed control does give it a broader range of speeds that allow you to control that noise more than the Thermaltake does. I feel like they're both very similar build quality. I do think the aluminium on top of the Thermaltake is probably a bit sturdier overall than the Cooler Master, but I think they're both pretty similar. Like, they're both primarily a plastic construction with then a metal finish on top. In the case of the Thermaltake, it's that brushed aluminium look. In the case of the Cooler Master, it's more of an aluminium mesh. I do feel like this mesh should probably let more air through overall as well. As for which one's best for you, it's probably going to depend on whether you want to be able to angle your laptop up safely or have a quieter system with a little bit more control over the options. So I hope you found this video helpful. Be sure to like it and also subscribe to my channel for more videos like this from me. Bye for now.